So Ben, welcome to the show.
Morning, Dion. How are you?
Very good. So welcome. And Ben, you've most recently, you've been at the CIO of Yahoo, but apparently there's been some events happen in the last week or so. So you have some exciting news to share. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an update. You've been on the show before about how things are going. Give us the news and tell us what's going on with you.
Yeah, so exciting times, really busy right now. So Yahoo was purchased by Verizon. The deal closed last Tuesday. So we're nice and fresh and getting into some deep merger work. And we're effectively combining AOL and Yahoo together to form a new company called Oath, which is a house of at least 50 brands, of which I still don't know all of them, but people know brands like TechCrunch and Huffington Post, and we have Yahoo Finance, Yahoo Sports. It's just an amazing opportunity to bring two giants together and get some awesome stuff working.
Oh, fantastic! So, yeah, that sounds like a big new responsibility. Can you give us kind of a sense of how big an IT empire that is for you to manage?
Yeah, so it's very similar companies and similar size. We'll end up with somewhere between 14,000 employees, I think, and globally. And we have about, what I know so far, 800 applications across the companies that we now have to merge together, and we have to get everyone productive as fast as we can, and also keep revenue moving, of course. So yeah, there's a lot to do at a global scale, which is really exciting, and gives us the ability to also times have changed to do things we maybe couldn't have done when you're keeping the lights on, and there's just all these reasons now to make some really big hairy moves and draw some lines in the sands and get things moving and shut down tech debt. So it's actually really exciting to get into this.
All right, so the big news is CIO of Oath now.
Yes.
And you're primarily a media and technology company.
Correct.
So that 14,000 employees kind of is very different in terms of the amount of IT you have per employee is probably much higher than it would be in a traditional organization. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think it's there's a lot of similarities, but there's also a lot more demands when you have thousands of engineers that are extremely technical, obviously, and they have very high expectations. And you also but we have a traditional sales team and marketing team and finance team, but the DNA of the company is different because everyone wants to be as efficient as possible, digital, and it's just great to work in that environment because you have less explaining on the why, like why do we have to automate this process? You have more to do around, well, why can't it happen now? And we know how technology works, and everyone knows everything. So there's a different pressure, but a more positive pressure of like, yeah, we just want to get it done, and less explaining, which is awesome.
Yeah, no, exactly. For those of you just joining us, we've got Ben Haines, CIO of Oath, his new role. We'll be taking your questions on Twitter, the CXO hashtag. If you look at that or post there, we'll be monitoring Twitter, and I'll ask Ben your questions. So Ben, the core role of the CIO today, one of the things you said was interesting to me about keeping the revenue flowing. And I think that there's this sense now that CIO has to be much more involved in P&L than ever before. And some companies put a chief digital officer in place for that. How does that work for you? Are you primarily responsible for digital P&L, or is there a chief digital officer too, or are you guys trying to figure all that out right now?
No, we have it's too big a job for one person, and with multiple platforms across the company and all our different properties and brands, it's not a one-person job, and I believe everyone at this company has to be thinking like a chief digital officer and how do we monetize advertising on all our different platforms. So the CIO role at this company really plays a major enabling role. So how, when we're in a merger situation, it's how does, employee A get access to all these systems that are on the Yahoo side but they're an AOL employee. In week one, it's just really hard to make all that happen. But we've got to keep selling, and we've got to merge sales teams together and make sure that everyone can get to what they need to get to, and things don't break. So yeah, it's a lot of enabling in this environment.
Yeah, that sure sounds like a lot of what we call business continuity, right? Making sure the lights are on and the infrastructure is running. So how are you going to manage innovation and pushing the company forward? These days, internet and media companies have to be moving at light speed, not trying to get people access to applications. Is that going to be a challenge for you, or?
Yeah, so we're working through different phases, and the initial couple of months really is about that business continuity. And then we're going very aggressive on what is our long-term strategy. So when you look at all the applications we have, we don't need 2 ERP systems. So how do we quickly get to one? And that helps us when you want to move fast. We don't have a lot of time for analysis. We can't overthink these things. And we can just move with what is the best product to use, and also the best practices in process, because teams get caught up a little bit on, we know the best way to do this, and our process is the best process in the world, which is awesome. But some things just need to work. And so we can move things really quickly by adopting a lot more standards, and especially when it comes to the plumbing, I call it. But adopt the standards as fast as we can, and then move into the pieces that really start to differentiate the business and help move the business forward. So the speed is a major catalyst to make some decisions and cut bad habits and bring in new processes and new technologies as needed.
Yeah, so that's it's the speed and agility is kind of the term that's in vogue for moving more quickly. I asked the top 50 CIOs that I could find. I think I included you in that survey, Ben, about whether they're feeling pressure this year to move quickly, and 96% said they felt either strong or very strong. 63% very strong pressure to move much more quickly in 2017. How are you dealing with that? What tools are in your tool chest that you're bringing to bear to help move more quickly, or what are you experimenting with?
Look, it all starts, funnily enough, with people and helping explain why some things need to happen faster than others, and also making sure everyone understands why. Like, why do we have to move fast? If finance has an objective that sales isn't aware of, and finance is trying to move faster than sales, that sales needs to be aware of why that's important and get everyone on board. And, once you get that communication and collaboration across departments, and this is a really, it's a specialty I believe all IT and CIOs really hone in on, as we work across all these departments and we have that visibility. So we've got to make sure everyone understands why we're doing this first. Otherwise, people start to block things. And once we get them on board, then we look at, what are the next tools and systems we need to move with. And some things just take time, and you've got to work through, systems of record can be challenging. But, if everyone understands why we're doing it, then the business can also give on some of those things that they really think they want. But, if I use Workday for an example, you can do some amazing things in there and spend a year configuring it, or you can spend 3 months and get it working, and then let's iterate. And so you start to bring some of the agile concepts really into some really traditional platforms. And it's like, guys, let's just get that foundation in, and then let's iterate on top and have that schedule. So it's not spending a year getting the perfect solution and everyone really loses interest. It's getting that base in and moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the interesting things about agility is that there's this big the goal is to build the right thing for the customer, provide the right thing to the customer with whatever resources that you have. Right. And I've had developers come to me saying, don't like having to redo things over and over again until it's right. And this is kind of the old throw it over the wall mentality we had.
Right.
Do we have to unlearn or rethink some of our old preconceptions in IT to modernize? And if so, what are those things that you think IT needs to kind of change?
Yes, we definitely need to unlearn the traditional waterfall approach to everything that we have, and it's very challenging in the systems of record space and ERP and spaces like that. And we have to get comfortable with some failure. And I think that's really important. Now, we're not going to fail on delivering a P&L and revenue. There are some limitations. But there's things where, right, let's at least get it out there and see what people think. If you're building an intranet, or let's get that, in the Valley we call it the minimal viable product. And we can really learn a lot from our production engineering teams and product engineering teams and apply that to IT. And just like, let's get it out there. Let's not, it can't be, horrible and bad. It's got to have the right user experience and have a solid foundation. But yeah, let's get it out there and see what people think, and then let's iterate and build on it. And I still see a lot of traditional IT people, they're looking for the ultimate blueprint, and we'll spend 6 months on the ultimate blueprint and all of that. And it's that we can't move fast enough like that. So that's probably the biggest thing I think we need to unlearn.
Yeah, and I think some people would be surprised that there is even waterfall. The Agile's been the mantra for 10, 15 years in the development space, right? But projects still in the large have a beginning, middle, and the end, right? Yeah. And so I think people look at it that way. But I think it's very interesting in telling what you said about that perfect blueprint. And this, the traditional IT skill set was around engineering, right? It's about this careful planning because the company's counting on the system to run the business. And so, there's risk management and governance and all these things that the end user doesn't understand has to go into it. But I think that we've perhaps overinvested in that skill set and not enough on the people skills, right? This whole design thinking around empathy for the user. So, what are your thoughts? I think it was very interesting what you said about learn from product engineering. Are you actively trying to take product engineering know-how and kind of move it more into the IT side?
Yeah, so little things like turning the conversation around to have product owners, and a product owner owns the life cycle of that product, and they bring teams together, and it's different for different groups, but we'll bring teams together where a product owner will actually have business analysts and engineers in the one team. And they're not having to go across silos and speak to different managers and get everyone aligned. It's like, no, you just own it. You own the life cycle of that product, and you need to make it happen. And that gives some awesome accountability, and it takes the conversation from an engineering conversation, like you said, to a product and business user engagement conversation. And so that's the goal. And I've been able to do it with some teams. It's a little harder if you're in Oracle ERP, but I still want that product ownership and just to keep driving. So that's one of the biggest things we've done, and we've changed entire teams around. And just little things. If you want to upset engineers, you got to just tell them they can't sit where they're sitting. They've got to sit next to the analysts, and they've got to sit with the product owners. And they can't hide in the background. And we literally forced all these teams together and said, all right, guys, you're all in this together. Let's make this work. And we've had some success. We've had some failures as well, but you need to do that to learn.
Well, yeah, and I've talked to several CIOs who, in trying to implement things like Agile or DevOps, which is the other sexy topic of the day. Yeah. It's fine. There's those that are reticent, and it's not so much the training that isn't sufficient. It is the holdouts, the people who have a hard time in adjusting their mindset. And so we just had a comment on Twitter from Jeff Susna.
Jeff, yeah.
Yeah, author of Designing Delivery. And he commented that explaining, this is your comment about, tell them why we have to move faster, right? And I agree with that completely. If people understand the motivation for something, they can get on board more easily. But he said it's not sufficient. He says you also have to guide them through experience, right? So make them walk the walk. And I've seen this too. Is until they've been in the trenches with you, they can't really understand. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I agree. The why is just the start, and I think that's the trick. If you don't start with the why, yeah, you're starting on the wrong foot, really. And so, yeah, helping to step everyone through that and work through experiences. And the more knowledgeable people you have, that helps that whole conversation. It's like, look, we tried it here. Here's what happened. It failed miserably. So here's why we need to do it this way. That definitely helps that conversation for sure.
Yeah, no, exactly. So what do you see as the big shifts, Ben, in today's IT operating environment, right? What's coming in and kind of just wrecking all the chess pieces? Is it mobility? And previously in your position at Yahoo, Yahoo's been one of the few companies to get mobile right, if you ask me.
Right.
But most companies are getting everything upended, their apple cart upended by trying to go to mobile because it's hard, really hard. Mm-hmm. But there's artificial intelligence and Internet of Things, and going to public cloud. Although I suspect that's not a problem for you guys. What's really starting to get on your radar and forcing you to spend more attention than you might be ready for?
So the mobile one is an interesting one. I feel like it's one area we're kind of failing at from the enterprise standpoint, and it's grating me quite a bit because I came in here just over a couple of years ago and just found a lot of hurdles from an enterprise perspective how to get mobile, which we are really powering towards. And this is one of those things, the catalyst of change now is like, okay, we have to bring all these applications together, and our model now is mobile only. Like if it doesn't work on mobile, you're gonna have a real tough time getting that application cleared through the integration process. So
most people won't use that, right? I mean, most people use mobile these days.
Yeah, the majority. Exactly. So right. So there's this awesome forcing function now where I've got to make sure our infrastructure is correct, and there's going to be workarounds for Oracle. Doesn't work on a mobile device. It's horrible. But maybe it's not really designed to, and there's a certain class of worker that's okay because they're sitting in the front of their PC the entire day, and that's all right. So yeah, we're really starting to force that function on mobile, and our fallback will be web only. So you should be able to work through a browser, and potentially get to a Chromebook only type experience. And different groups, will have different capabilities and opportunities to move to that model. But that's really where we're heading. The other big piece that's probably no surprise is security. And it's been a really interesting journey for me personally, because I went through, mid-2000s where IT was, we were the Department of No, and you must use a BlackBerry because it's the only secure thing, and you must be on the VPN and connecting to all our resources because that's the only secure way to do it. Went through the startup of the whole SaaS space, and that was going to change the world, and everything's on the internet and consumerization of IT. And I think we're not back, but we're in a very different security world right now when it comes to technology. And we have to be a lot more considerate about security and not regress all the way back to the Department of No. But we have to educate everyone in the company about, there's secure ways to do things these days. If you don't have two-factor as a default, you should not be operating. You should not be a CIO as far as I'm concerned. If you're not mandating two-factor authentication in your company, that's just a baseline. And then let's start from there. So yeah, that's probably the biggest challenge for us right now, is making sure you blend that end user experience. It's we can't get back to the Department of No. You have to blend that in a secure end user experience, and that's probably the biggest nut we're trying to crack right now.
Yeah, that cybersecurity, which can be a career-ending event, for IT leaders. That is the tail that's wagging the dog. And if you look at the CIO priority surveys that always come out every year, the real priority at the very, very tippy top is that security. We have to make it all safe and work.
Right.
But it tends to all of a sudden monopolize budget, time, attention, and makes it hard to innovate. And so what happens with things like shadow IT? We see that, an endless wave of new tools and technologies is just kind of pouring over the firewall into our organizations. I have people call me up and say, we just did a survey and 20% of our workforce is using WhatsApp to do their work, right? And we have no control over that. What do you do about all that?
Yeah, it really starts with a lot of education. The security is not the CIO's responsibility. It's not the CISO's responsibility. And I love CISOs because they help us and they hinder us, but we have to have this awesome partnership and work together and share that burden really of security. Look, it's a company problem, and if you want to be that person that brings in that application that suddenly all your employee data is now available on the internet because you went around policies, that's that's a risk you're taking, and you have to, but you've got to go company wide. Like here's why. It's back to here's why we need to be secure, and here's why you need to do this, and we're doing our best to make it fast and deliver things as fast as we can in a secure way. So we're just starting though, because shadow IT to me is a reflection on IT, in that we're not doing what the company needs, and it's two-sided. There's factions or business groups in the company that just want to do it themselves because they want to own it, but that's also a bit of a reflection. It means we haven't built the right relationship. They don't understand how we can deliver and how we can help, or there's history and you come into a 20-year-old company where IT hasn't delivered and you've got to rebuild that trust, and you rebuild that trust through executing and showing, like, here's what we can do. And if you make it easy enough for the business, I believe most of them don't. As long as they've got so many things to worry about, you can tick the security box, you can make their people productive. They're like, awesome, I can actually get on to running my business. So it's a complex beast we've got to work through.
Yeah, and so this brings us full circle. The title of this episode is Rethinking IT in the Exponential Era. And it's this exponential growth of tools and technologies and the standards that you were talking about earlier, and the needs of the business, right, to move much more quickly. Can IT do it all? I mean, this is the question I'm seeing starting to ask: is a little tiny department, that's consuming 5 to 7% of revenue to technology enable the entire business and the whole supply chain and meet all customer needs? Is that realistic? Do we need to think of a new way of empowerment and enablement? How are you thinking about dealing with that challenge?
Yeah, I think there's certain things we need to rethink, and we're just starting this journey here now with the new company, which is awesome. But how do we provide platforms to enable people to be self-sufficient and give them data? Think about internal APIs and putting these I guess they're large, but these secure platforms in place that people can then like business intelligence is a big one. There's just data everywhere, so how do we provide some data access tools and then enable analysts? Like, we don't need to be writing reports. Like, the days of IT writing reports are well and truly over. How do we get that data that we bless, it's coming from the single source and all of those traditional enterprise data management governance happens, and then they can write the reports they want to write. And that's just one example. I think you look at different platforms where how do we get Salesforce has tried to do it, but to me they're kind of a pretty big legacy application now. I know they wouldn't like me saying that, but they're complex. But the declarative space, I still think there's some work to be done there, where you can have these people building smaller applications which are very departmental in nature, and it's solving their problem, which IT, like so we don't have time to get to that departmental issue. But how do you provide them guidelines and architectures and guidance around, go and build this app in this platform, knock yourselves out. We know it'll be secure. And we give them wrappers around identity. Identity is critical. How to provide all these foundational wrappers so that they can be enabled. I don't have the answers. That's kind of where I think we need to be heading. And that's what I'm working through the team with on that.
Yeah, no, and I don't think anyone has definitive answers. There's been some interesting success stories, things, like change agents or IT champions programs where, you let them experiment or let them bring their shadow IT experiment in from the cold, and you look at it and say, I'll make this safe and secure, or no, I'll need to help you replace it. So I think there are some signposts that kind of show us where this is all going. Right. One of the things in your background, because you and I have, had a long relationship in the industry, I know that you know a lot about the digital workplace and things like collaboration, and that's been changing a lot. And I know that you've kind of been on the forefront of that. How is that evolving in high-tech organizations like yours right now?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The fallacy of one collaboration platform is there. Like there isn't. There is not one collaboration platform. And to standardize a company of 10,000+ people on one platform is a fool's errand, I believe, right now. And it's really interesting. There's holy wars, I call them, over different tech tools. So we've got the Slack thing going on here, and you have the HipChat camp, and everyone loves the tool that they want to use. And we actually built an integration platform to, I think we called it Super Chat. My team was a little hack thing they did to connect different chat platforms, because one team was in HipChat, one was in Slack, and they liked it because they liked it. And there's different integrations into back-end tools and all of that. But they also wanted to be on the same conversation. So it's like, all right, how do we get the chat tools actually talking to each other? So I think the collaboration space has really moved into that chat messaging side of it. That's kind of risen to the top as what everyone wants to use, but we're still buried in email. There's still that reality. Intranets, to me, I've seen really have, they're still just a place for people to go to get some really good information, but there's not a lot of social collaboration happening, I believe, in the intranet space, at least in our company. It's still, like I said, it's that destination to go to. But everyone's really starting to focus on chat. And we're going to see that blow up because there's an overflow of information. There's too many Slack channels. There's too many HipChat channels. And people don't know where to go to get information. It's going to be interesting to see just, it's sitting back a little bit and just watching that evolve, because it's IT can't sit there and go, well, here's how the company's going to collaborate. Let's throw it out there and they'll tell us how they want to collaborate. It's quite interesting.
Now, so I mean, and I run into this a lot in organizations because my background is also in digital workplace, and the question is, should we train workers to modulate their collaboration to be more efficient? There's a saying now, too much collaboration, too little collaboration, not good. You need to be right in the middle somewhere. Or is it a filter failure issue, as Clay Shirky famously said? And we want to capture all that information, but we need to just manage the knowledge better. Where are we going? Because the fire hose is a complaint I hear from everyone I talk to now.
Look, I think it starts as a people problem at first, and then you can solve it with some technology. But it's an interesting one, because there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of really good conversation at the departmental, but even like the smaller groups and teams where they're talking and just working. It's not a company-wide communication thing, I don't believe. But yeah, I don't know how much success we would have. I think it's if you try to explain about, why do you have to be blasting out all this information to everyone? Like, who really needs to hear it? But people are opting in. And so it's a person's choice. If someone has their Slack channel and someone's interested, they're opting into that conversation. If they don't like it, they can opt out, and filter that way. But I still think we need to see how this evolves. It's going to be interesting.
So it sounds like you're probably more on the side of some digital collaboration skills we need to teach in this much more open communication era.
Yeah, it's an awareness. Where are people? What do people really need to hear? But I do think the technical side will come into play for sure. And like I said, the opt-in is we have many different, like I said, different channels here, and I don't opt into a lot of them because I can't filter the amount of information. I don't know what's relevant, and it's kind of bad. But I have some people that I say, look, I need you to monitor this and let me know if anything comes up that I should be aware of.
Yeah, and hopefully it won't be people in the future that will have these artificial intelligent agents that can draw our attention to things that need to be done. The unblinking gaze, as it were.
Yeah, so, definitely.
So that brings us to the next topic. So collaboration is a problem that most organizations are trying to get better at. We have unengaged employees. Over half of most organizations are just doing the least that they can. Yeah. But how do we collaborate better with the business today, given that they have more needs and they also have more options to get IT? They don't have to go to you, Ben. And I suspect, and as in most organizations, they sometimes don't. Yep. But how can we get them more involved? Come to us first. And when they do, how do we be responsive? Because it's the backlog issue. So you already got 50 projects, and how do you service them? This is what's driving the CMO away, because they're often at the bottom of the list because it's not considered mission critical.
Right. So it's getting that organizational alignment, and I have different business teams at different stages and different levels of trust is really what it comes down to, and now it's all. We've got to start again for certain reasons because we have different leadership now and in the merger, and it's kind of interesting but also scary to start rebuilding those trust levels. You build the trust by executing. So if you're in there and you're at, everyone's trying to work together and you're executing, then I've found the business don't mind. They actually prefer you to be helping. It's where you don't have that trust and where you don't have that. You've got to prove why you're doing it and how you can help, and that is people to people. You've got to talk to people and work through it. And then there's also, once again, getting the company aligned. If an organization's wasting money and duplicative service to what we offer, that's a pretty basic conversation. If we're doing it right, and there's money waste, people are always happy to have remove some OpEx and not have those costs. So that's one angle we work through, and but I really look at my team to build those relationships and really get into how can we help. And then when you find departments that aren't funded well enough, sometimes we have money they don't, funnily enough. Like I want you, but there's a team I know that they were trying to do something. I'm like, well, that to me is 0.5 of an engineer and an analyst, and I can help you and make that happen. They're like, really? Like, yeah, because we have the machine and we have it all working. We can slot that into a sprint, and they're amazed. But then there's also joint efforts where I'm getting a lot of conversation. Is like, well, if IT doesn't do it, they're going to go and do it and cost the company more money. So why not fund IT to do it? And we'll do it and it's in a lot better interest for the company. And you've got to start just getting those conversations. And like I said, shadow IT is a reflection of IT predominantly not doing what the company needs. The fact is the company's spending money to make that happen. And so we need to prove we can do it better.
That's very interesting. And I think that's telling that, you're willing to sponsor business projects. If you see the right opportunity, you have the resources and presumably maybe some new tools and technologies you'd love to pilot in that area.
Correct.
But you were talking about that IT has to go deeper. And I think this is a longstanding challenge. And IT is its own discipline, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like asking a doctor who spent, years and years and years accumulating this rarefied knowledge in this special area to also learn to do something else, right? So this is what IT always has to do. It has to learn the technology and then has to learn the business too. Right. And I see a lot of IT people are reluctant, but we see in all the new job skill breakdowns. Everyone's going to have to be more multidisciplinary, transdisciplinary, be an expert in technology and the business. Is that really going to fly, though? I mean, are IT groups going to be able to make that move, or is there always going to be this resistance?
What's the saying? Resistance is futile. So, look, I've seen, and I look for business people first over IT people, and a business person who understands IT will be more successful, and it depends on the level. Obviously, business. An engineer is an engineer.
Yeah, maybe not the person to do your microservices architecture, but
Exactly. But especially when you look at senior leaders and people running business process and product, even development, they really, it's harder to find a technologist who can flip up to the business space. It depends on their training and background, but a couple of my key leaders, one came from marketing and ran all these different programs and customer experience and customer support, and had a bent for IT, and she was great at program management and project management and analysis, and now she's leading a massive IT team. And I've had many successes with bringing what I call business leaders in, and but you have to have a blend, like you said. Your microservice architecture, it's a very specialized. So it's really, I guess, diversity within your team of the business IT leaders is critical, absolutely critical to move forward.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. So we're getting close to the end of the show, and Tim Crawford, my good friend, you may be familiar with him, Ben.
Crawford,
CIO expert. Noted that it's the impact of consumer engagement and digital collaboration that will impact the corporate world. Do you agree with that statement? I mean, I see at the top of the list now, along with cybersecurity, now is customer experience is the other big conversation.
Right.
Is that the right priority? I mean, what should IT leaders be focusing on, if you can generalize in that way?
So we really have a duality here, because we have internal customers, and there's been all these arguments of we are business partners, but we are providing a service as well, right? And we have to partner. We have to think about that internal customer experience, and how is that helping the company and helping the groups work together. And then externally facing, for sure, it really is. Then for us, as we are a digital company in all intents and purposes. Everything we do is internet based, and so that is a major critical high priority of what is that engagement, and like you said earlier, the mobility apps and all of that type of stuff. So I think it is. I really do.
And so it kind of brings that going back to rethinking IT. If we talk about the role of the CIO and where it's going, and we look at consumer engagement or customer experience, is the CDO and the CMO largely going to carry that away and be responsible for that, and the CIO get everything else? I see some of that, and then I also see everything rolling back over to the CIO. That that all this gets dotted line back to the CIO anyway.
Right.
What do you see as the general trend?
Yeah, I think the general trend as you either get the right CIO in place, or you get the incumbent really steps up to it. There's just this underlying technology gap, we'll call it, that we are well versed in, that the marketing people aren't. And for a CMO to be successful, you have to have an extremely strong partnership at the CIO level and enable that. Otherwise, you have a very big problem of creating a really big silo that won't be as successful if you have the right collaboration in place. CDO, to me, I see CDO and CIO kind of evolving, and to me, there won't be much difference between a CDO and a CIO, and maybe that's a logical step. CIOs, if you're the right type of CIO, you do become a CDO, and it's really that final piece of that puzzle. Like I said before, we've worked through finance, we've worked through sales, and we've digitized all that. Now we're going to consumers, And maybe that's the evolution of CIO. Really, is you are now CDO as you bring in that true end user consumer experience into that group. But every organization is going to be different, right?
Well, and I've actually gone on record saying I think that's what's going to happen, and now we're seeing it happen. We have folks like David Chow, who's just recently got the CDO role added to CIO. Alexander Bachman at Unica Insurance, same thing. He recently got the CDO role added to the CIO role, his title. So I think that's exactly what's going to happen for reasons that are too complicated to go into here. But so, final question, Ben. And I have a tremendous amount of respect for you. You've been a CIO at a lot of top organizations. So thinking back, pulling back into all that experience and all the current trends and issues that you're facing right now, what updated pieces of advice would you have for CIOs just getting into their role today?
Have a respect for what's happened, but don't focus on it. So, and if you've been lucky to have enough to have the right leaders that you've been mentoring with, that's great. But really, we're changing, we're evolving, and if you've been in the IT space for 10 years, it's extremely different now. So look outside your organization and look at what different companies are doing, and you have to network. You have to see where everyone's at, because what you might be thinking, oh wow, this is crazy to do X, but there's 10 other companies that already done it, and you're, oh, okay, that's not that bad at all. Look across industries and have a look at what different industries are doing. And this is my third, I guess, industry that I've been in, and it's very different how they operate. There's a lot of similarities though, and so have a look at what's happening out there. Don't buy the marketing hype from the enterprise software vendors. Like, they're there to do a job and sell you something. Make sure you understand how that fits into your vision and what their vision is, and you've got to be responsible for that outcome and not just listen to the architecture coming out of some organizations. So that's probably some of the big topics.
Yeah, the one that really resonated with me is this openness, willing to learn from others that have gone before you, because almost no one's a unique snowflake anymore. There are some battle-hardened people who are further down on the journey, and you have to find and listen to them, so and see what they've learned. Yeah. So great. Oh, well, Ben, thanks so much for making time in your busy schedule. I know you got some crazy things going on with all the changes in your organization and your new role. I hope that that goes well, and I'd love to have you back on in a year or so to maybe give us an update on how all that's gone.
Cool.
So I appreciate that, and thanks for being on CXOTalk.
Cool. Thanks, Dion.